Hey guys, what's up? Last video lecture here for Unit 4, talking about imperfect competition still. We are going to cover the last market structure for imperfect competition, which is monopolistic competition. Here's the good news. You already know everything about monopolistic competition, okay? Its name should kind of lead you right into what we're looking for here. Okay, so once again, let's look at it on the scale. If we notice it's a little bit more towards perfect competition, at least on the line that we have up here. And just as a quick reminder, the characteristics of monopolistic competition: there's a large number of sellers. They do have differentiated products. They do have some control over price. The reason I was hesitating a second, I was trying to think, if we think about somebody like cereals, candy bars, those types of things, they kind of fall under this monopolistic competition, and we'll talk more about the reasons why. There is easy entry and exit. That's a little bit different because it would seem like for you and I to begin making cereal and getting into that particular business, that would be true. That would be a high barrier for someone starting a business. But let's say you're talking about two cereal companies, and one cereal company all of a sudden sees a spike in demand for their chocolatey Cocoa Puffs, and then another industry can change or create a product that is very similar with a little bit different name, and all of a sudden it's real easy for them to jump in. So there are low barriers of entry because some companies are already up and running and have the ability to easily either come up with a new product or tweak a product that they already have based on what somebody else may already be getting a lot of high demand for. Okay. They do a lot of non-price competition advertising. You think about, cereal commercials, stuff like that. They're selling the uniqueness of their differentiated product more than they are the price of cereal. Matter of fact, we rarely see those types of things even advertised. So if we think about all the characteristics, this is where in class we would spend a little bit of time, talking about what markets like cereal, like candy bars, that would fit into that. And so, yeah, we can kind of skip that because I already talked about that. We can probably burn on through our examples. And so, yeah, this is kind of where we want to dig in a little bit. So, monopolistic competition is a combination of monopoly and competition. Here are the qualities of a monopoly that they have. Right? They do have control over the price of their own good because you might be the only one that makes this particular, blueberry flavored cereal. Okay. And if you do that, then you don't have to necessarily worry about price so much. So that being said, demand is going to be greater than marginal revenue. They have plenty of advertising, like we talked about in the last slide. They are not very efficient. And so, yeah, perfect competition qualities. There are a lot of sellers. They can jump in and out of markets depending on what demand is for their product, or if someone else makes a product, begins making a lot of profit on it, they can easily kind of jump into that industry. Therefore, in the long run, they're going to end up with zero economic profit. Okay, so and we'll look at that on the graph here in just a second. Let's talk about what differentiated products really means. That means that these goods are not identical, and you're trying to capture a part of the market by coming up with your own blueberry flavored cereal that no one else has. In other words, some type of unique good. We have to use non-price as a way to get these people because our products do have substitutes. So if we do make them too high, then someone could easily go, you know, I don't want the blueberry flavored. I'm going to stick with the normal whatever. And so there's a lot of non-price competition. Okay. Generally, with non-price competition, you see things like brand names, you see packaging. Sometimes you'll get, you know, athletes on the box or whatever the case may be. Whatever the attributes are to the product, this blueberry flavored whatever. You know, somebody like Chick-fil-A where they really focus on service. Location can be a non-price competition, a way of promoting your product, and then obviously the advertising with two goals. One, we want to increase demand, and you want to make demand more inelastic. In other words, you want to make it so that people want that product. So anyway, this is a real cool thing we normally do in class, where we take a look at all of the differentiated products that a lot of these companies make. You can see where we were kind of playing around. I guess I left the writer thing working. I saved it there. But anyway, you can see how all of these parent companies make a lot of different things. And so, yeah. So let's talk about drawing them. We'll buzz through this real quick. You guys already know how to draw monopolistic competition. The good news is all of our rules are still into play. So yeah, monopolistic competition is made up of price makers, so marginal revenue is going to be less than demand. Okay, and since they're price makers, this is a monopolistic characteristic, and so the monopoly gang sign will come into play. But this is key, because I know some people may be thinking, well, wait a minute, that means that I can't tell this graph apart from a monopoly graph. You were right, okay? You can't tell them apart, because when you first look at them, they're the exact same thing. The question will always tell you, okay? So if you get a question, if you get an FRQ and it's talking about monopolistic competition, or it's talking about a monopoly, you'll know specifically from the question what they're asking you, okay? And so anyway, price is less than demand. They're still going to produce where MR equals MC. They're going to charge up to the demand curve, and with that, it acts exactly like a monopoly, right? They're going to show profit, just like a monopoly does, but here's the difference. So in the short run, this is the same graph as a monopoly making a profit in the short run, okay? What's going to happen? This cereal company begins making a blueberry flavored, let's just say Cheerios. I know they're making one right now. Cheerios makes a blueberry flavored cereal. Okay, all of a sudden it becomes the rage. Everybody's buying it. It is the greatest thing. Other cereal companies begin coming up with new products that also make their own version of a blueberry flavored, right? In the long run, new firms are going to enter. Okay, so it looks like a monopoly from a standpoint of it shows a profit in the short run, but because it is in a competitive industry, monopolistic competition, it now takes on the characteristic of perfect competition, where firms will enter based on profit being seen in the market, and this is going to drive down the demand for firms already in the market, right? So in other words, I'm making a blueberry flavored cereal. My demand is at one point, another business comes in, people start buying, you know, maybe the blueberry flavored Frosted Flakes. Sounds awful, but I guess it could be a thing, right? And now all of a sudden the demand for my blueberry flavored Cheerios is going to go down a little bit because people are now buying the other product, okay? And that'll look like this. So if firms enter and demand falls, it's going to fall to the point of zero economic profit. So once again, I'm showing a profit. Now I'm down to the minimum profit, zero profit, not minimum, zero profit. Okay, one more time, showing a profit, firms enter, my demand now drops down to zero economic profit. That's it. Okay, price and quantity falls, total revenue will now equal total cost. That's kind of the trick to it, okay? And that puts me in long run equilibrium. So basically, that is a monopoly graph in long run equilibrium showing no economic profit. Now, that is something that would differentiate a unregulated monopoly with monopolistic competition. Okay? So quantity is where MR equals MC, price is up to the ATC, and then you're in long run equilibrium. So why does demand shift? Well, we talked about it just a second ago, but just kind of reconfirm, when short run profits are made, firms are going to enter. New firms means that there's a substitute, and that's less market share for me. People are going to go buy that other product, therefore my demand is going to fall. Now, the opposite happens if short run losses are made, right? If I'm losing money, nobody likes that particular cereal, people are going to bail. They're going to go back to making their regular Frosted Flakes, and people are going to shift back to me. So demand now for my product will go back to where it was. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like on a graph. We're making a loss there. Firms are going to bail because, see, this is the amount of the loss, right? That probably should be red instead of green. Green doesn't feel like a loss. Green, anyway, whatever. So yeah, in the short run, it's going to look like a monopoly making a loss. In the long run, firms are going to enter. This is going to drive up the demand for my product, and we're going to get this bang shift from the left to the right. Okay, and then it's going to go to the same point where price and quantity increase, and total revenue and total cost are the same. Okay, so are monopolistically competitive firms efficient? Well, let's take a look. This is where they would produce in the long run, right? Is it the amount that society wants? Certainly not, because society wants on here. So it's not allocatively efficient, right? How about productively efficient? No, because it's not producing at the minimum ATC either. All right, so in that respect, it also still acts like a monopoly from a standpoint of it's not socially or productively efficient. Okay, so the firm also has what's known as excess capacity. In other words, they could make this amount, right? They could make what society wants. They could make it at a cheaper cost, but for some reason, they decide not to. Okay. So if you were to get a question on excess capacity, okay, excess capacity is basically the difference from the quantity that is being produced at MR equals MC, the profit maximizing quantity, and what society wants, or the minimum ATC, what they could possibly make should they decide to be efficient. Okay, so excess capacity means that the firm could produce at the lowest cost, but for whatever reason they decide not to, and it's the gap between the minimum ATC output and the profit maximizing output. Okay, and so you could get a problem that asks you how much the excess capacity is, and you would just do the math on the two different quantities, or you would say Q2 minus Q1, whatever that case may be. It's not the amount underproduced, but the difference between those two. All right, so we're looking at this minus this, productively efficient minus the MR equals MC. All right, so the firm can produce at a lower cost, but it holds back production because it wants to maximize profit, and that's ultimately why they do that. The reason that they've decided not to produce as much is so that they can maximize profit, and that's the amount of the excess capacity. All right, all that's left on here now are some practice problems. I'll let you guys roll through those. You can pull up the PowerPoint and roll through those, and yeah, that's it for monopolistic competition.